to look like I'm so disheveled. Are there people waiting? Are there people here? There's people here. Hi, everyone.
Welcome, Jen.
Oh my goodness, I've gone from meeting to meeting today. I just had some great conversations with the staff of Senator Booker's office and Senator Brown's office about food access and food recovery. So that was exciting, and sorry for my entrance like a whirlwind.
Those of you who get to work with Jen on a daily basis, you're used to it. It's fun. and she's proud, feels the same way about me.
All right, well, I will go ahead and get started sharing my screen, and we can go ahead and get started since it is 3 o'clock. All right.
And just a quick note, if for questions, could you please, for participants, to put them in the Q&A section. I'll be monitoring that before the chat, so that would be helpful to keep questions to the Q&A section of the webinar.
Yes, thank you, Jake. Welcome, 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 everybody. It is so nice to be here with you today. One of the questions we get more than anything else is working with food donors. And you know, I've talked about this topic a lot, but I wanted to take a sort of a little bit of a different take on it today and talk about how to get past the no, because a lot of people come to us and say, you know, well, I reached out to this, and they just said no, they won't work with us. And if you know me, you know that I almost never take no for an answer. So let's talk a little bit about how you can do that. So when you're sitting down with your partner or your best friend and you're figuring out where you're going to go to dinner, right? And you're like, oh, I want to go for Chinese, and they say no. You know, you don't just abandon it and not go to dinner, right? You kind of have a conversation and work through it and figure out what works for both of you. And approaching a food donor is the same way, right? You're going to go in there and you're going to tell them you feel like Chinese food, and they're going to say no, that's not what they feel like. That's okay. We're not going to abandon that conversation. We're going to keep going until we can find a restaurant that we both would like to eat at. I just do want to note that one of these restaurants is called Whiskey. And I am curious to know whether if you roll that means you just abandon the idea of going out and stay home and drink whiskey. If anybody knows of a restaurant called Whiskey, let me know, because I'm really curious now. So when you're going to a food donor, this is sales, right? It's a pitch. You're not asking them to do something for you. You're pitching a mutually beneficial partnership. Again, it's finding that restaurant that you both want to eat at. So you want to put the donor at the center. When you walk in and you ask them to work with you, don't talk about you. Don't talk about what all you're going to do for them right off the bat. Talk about what their needs are, what their concerns are, find out what their pain points are, and then use that as a launch pad for how your organization is going to be able to work with them to solve those problems or solve those pain points and concerns. And remember, not all donors are the same. And so again, this is critical about what are their pain points. Approach each one uniquely. Grocery stores have different needs and different pain points than, say, a hospital or a taco truck or a bakery. So getting in there and having those conversations with them is really critical, because you're going to want to have a personal approach, a specialized approach when you are trying to get past that no. There's obviously a lot of really great reasons to donate. And, you want to go in equipped, understanding all of the different good reasons that they might want to donate. So, it's good publicity. We're always giving our donors shout outs on social media. I'm sure you guys are too. It's something that they can really feel good about. And a lot of corporate marketing programs love to talk about their charitable efforts. There are tax benefits, and that's not going to appeal to every donor, but for some, especially for those with multiple footprints, the tax benefits are really attractive. It also lowers their waste management costs. And this is something that is really often overlooked, that supermarkets, hospitals, everybody is paying to have their garbage hauled away. If they're throwing away good food instead of donating it, that's costing them money. They are actually paying for that. We have done a study. We did a white paper with ShopRite in Philadelphia, and we're able to identify, their waste savings by not throwing away all the food that they had been previously discarding. So if they can go from dumpster pickup 3 times a week to once a week, that's tangible savings for them. And you can really help them understand exactly what benefit they're going to get. Sustainability is a really hot watchword right now. I mean, I think it's valid, but it's also something that more and more corporations need to be demonstrating how they are being sustainable. Consumers do not want to patronize businesses that don't have at least one eye on sustainability. So an organization or a business that is looking for a way to claim that green credibility, that sustainable credibility, a food rescue program, a food donation program is exactly that. It's the right thing to do, especially for smaller, localized family businesses. They care about the communities they're in, and it matters to them. They feel good about knowing that the food that they are now not throwing away is going to help their neighbors. And then sometimes it's just because somebody told them that they have to. The management, the government in California, for example, or somebody else told them that they have to. So you want to have a deep, good appreciation and understanding for all of the variety of reasons that donors might donate, because you want to be able to have a long conversation with them, not just like drop it in a sentence. You want to be able to really get into the meat of it with them. Aside from them then telling them, what benefits they might enjoy, what are their objections? Have them list them and whittle away at them one by one. So, you'll often go in and the first thing they'll say is, well, we're not allowed. That's easy, right? Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act. Yes, you are. Many states also have complementary laws that bolster the Good Samaritan Act. And there's currently a bill before Congress, the Food Donation Improvement Act, which will give this even more teeth. So while we still hear this a lot, there's no validity to it. Bring a copy with you. And the Harvard Food and Law Policy Clinic actually has a version you can download. And the great thing about that is it's got Harvard's logo at the top. And, nothing is more credible than seeing Harvard's name on something, right? We don't have anything to donate. Also a very common objection. So we hear this a lot at grocery stores, or we're already donating everything we can possibly donate. Again, don't accept this as an answer. Ask them to explain, talk about it with them. Don't necessarily be challenging and belligerent, like, yes, you do, I know you do, right? But be thoughtful, like, oh, that's really great. So what are you donating? And kind of work your way through. Like, is there anything that you're throwing away that you're not donating that maybe could be rescued? What food is going into the dumpster? They may not know that they can donate milk at or past its due date or its sell by date, for example. They may think that you can't accept anything except bread, or that the only thing that you're interested in is meat. Right? And I know meat is a hot commodity, but there's plenty of other really, really good food in a grocery store to be donated. And something we find over and over and over again is they are not used to dealing with food recovery and food rescue. In their minds, food donation is frozen meat to the food bank, bread to food pantries, right? There is so much more in the footprint of a grocery store to rescue. So really kind of dig into that and go through, explain what type of foods that you do accept and that they are allowed to donate them, or you are interested in getting them. You will often hear, we already donate to this organization. right? Again, going back to the previous slide and the previous concept, we are the and, not the or. Just dig into that. Don't say, okay, and walk out the door, right? This is the equivalent of saying, well, I don't want Chinese food tonight. Really suss into it, because most grocery stores and many stores or potential donors are already donating some of their product to somebody, but most of them do not have 100% coverage. Most of them are, grocery stores, as you know, tend to give just the frozen meat and the bread. Or they're donating to a food pantry that distributes on Thursday and picks up on Wednesday. Well, what happens the other 6 days of the week, right? So you want to really get in there and figure out what it means that they're already donating, where are the holes, and how can you help them maximize their impact. And again, when you're exploring these things, go back to the benefits. So it sounds like you're only donating 1 day a week. It's really great that you've got started, but I bet we can get even more of your organic waste out of your garbage and to people who need it.
Jen, the other thing I want to add is ask if their partnership is currently working. Now, not for punitive reasons or to be sneaky, but if there's a nonprofit partner who's intending to pick up but is not actually picking up, ask if you can do the delivery for that nonprofit partner. Take some of the logistical work out of it for them, in turn strengthening your donor base, strengthening your nonprofit partner base. There are other ways around that as well.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Jake, because what we found is that a lot of food pantries or churches or programs that are picking up their own donations really struggle to make that happen. And sometimes that results in unsatisfactory relationships with the donor, where they're saving stuff and it's not getting picked up. But also it means that agency is not getting the food that they need. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that more about that in a second. But another common objection is we don't have time. This is fair. There's a lot of tension in the retail industry right now where folks are short staffed. So respect their time, make it super easy for them, help them understand that this is not going to take any more time than what they're already doing, because they're already pulling things off the shelf, right? They're already pulling produce and dairy off the shelf, so it's not sitting out there on the floor to be sold. All they have to do is put it into a box marked donation and throw it in the fridge instead of the garbage. It does not have to be something that is onerous to them and their staff, but then you also have to show up, right? It is really, really frustrating to donors if you set up a donation and then you don't show up, because they feel that they've wasted their time. And that is the death of a relationship. And this is something that will feed into this. We've tried it before and it doesn't work, right? And this is kind of what Jake's point was as well, is, figure out what didn't work before. Did the agency not show up? Was it not often enough? Was it too often? Were they demanding and unpleasant to work with? You never know what you're going to find when you dig into this. So really kind of dig into what didn't work before, how it was problematic for them, and then how you can work together to fix that. And I say here, explain how you do it better, but that's probably not the best wording. I think at this point, you really want to talk about working with them to create a donation program that works for them, and really make them your partner in this process. And explain what your key differentiators are, how your program might be different. For a food pantry that's picking up their own rescue, they may have staff that has lots of other duties. If you have no other purpose than to pick up the rescue, that means it's going to be easier for you to go get that rescue. And you can even revitalize past relationships by working to get that pantry the donation that they could no longer manage to pick up, as Jake pointed out. If you go through all of these processes, you can almost always turn a no into a yes, right? But if you can't, you want to work towards an alternative that is not a yes, but it's also not a no. right? And this is where that negotiation comes into play. So if somebody says they really don't have any extra, and sometimes this is true, especially at a small chef-owned restaurant, right? You're going to run into folks that really just don't have a surplus. That's great. I mean, that is fantastic. Applaud them for keeping their waste down, but look for other ways to partner with them, especially if they're sort of like apologetic and they really are focused in on your mission. Small restaurants can be great partners in terms of doing events, creating products from wasted food for earned income. They can host dinners for you. They can help you find volunteers. Those restaurants that may not have anything to donate can become partners in other ways. And then, of course, always give them your card, give them some way for you to some way to contact you in case that changes. I always tell the story of one year on Valentine's Day, there was a blizzard and nobody showed up for their special Valentine's Day dinners at half the restaurants in town. And so the next day we got a lot of donations from restaurants that we didn't typically work with, because they knew about us. We had already established that relationship. We had had the conversations with them, and they knew that in the event that something, crazy happened, they could come to us. And of course, that happened as the pandemic kicked off as well. And some of you may have had that experience. But getting your name out there to people will ensure that when those one-time donations do happen, you're top of mind. We're already donating everything we can donate. I mean, that may be true. There are some programs like Trader Joe's is known for having really robust donation programs and maybe having coverage of all of the days of the week. Again, that's great. There's no competition here. There's only cooperation. If all that food is going to a good home, that is fantastic. Congratulate them. Keep that relationship positive and forward looking. Give them your card and let them know if anything ever changes, you can be there to pick things up. And these types of stores are really prone to things like blackouts and when their power fails and needing to call in for an assist. And so, be ready for them when that happens. I would suggest that if you don't have a plan in place for how you would handle that, think about that. Put in a plan for if the power goes out and a grocery store calls you, how are you going to very quickly get that food picked up and delivered? And so you can be that resource for those organizations. And then, of course, check back at a designated time. Just put a note on your calendar to go back maybe every 6 months and just check in, say hi, see how things are going, let them know you're there. And if any partners have dropped out, you can potentially be available to step in. I can't make that decision. I can't make that decision for the business. Again, this is something you can't overcome at that moment, but it doesn't have to be a no. All right. That is just a bridge to the next step. So have them help you identify who you should talk to next. Leave your card for the manager or owner or wherever it is they suggest you talk to, but then go back, reach out to that person. And I have had a couple of donors that I've successfully brought on that took, 3 or 4 introductions and nope, sorry, I can't make that decision before I got to the decision maker that was able to give us the yes. I don't have time for this. This is really important to hear off the bat, especially in this climate where there are a lot of grocery stores struggling to be staffed. Don't push the conversation. Don't try to force it. Let them know you understand. Ask if there's a better time for you to come back. And if there's not, offer to buy them a cup of coffee before work or a beer after work or something. Offer to meet them outside of work and make it worth their time if they're interested in having a conversation. It can be a 15-minute conversation in the cafe at that grocery store before their shift if necessary. And leave them your card in case they change their mind.
Jen, real quick, something I want to add to that is oftentimes managers or people who are working on the floor at a grocery store or really anywhere in the food service industry don't have time to schedule meetings. So it's often good just to say, can I drop in sometime on Tuesday morning between 9 and 11? And schedule it in that way, like a loose schedule rather than can I meet you at 10:45? oftentimes something will come up and they just won't be able to. So there needs to be some flexibility there.
That is such great advice. And also being aware of what the grocer schedule looks like. Don't show up at lunchtime. They're always packed at lunchtime. Don't show up at 4:30, 5 o'clock, even 3 o'clock when the school buses get out. That's when grocery stores get busy. Don't show up the day before a holiday, for God's sakes. Really think about who you're going to visit. And if it's not a grocer, it's a Bruegger's bagel or bakery. Don't show up Saturday morning. Figure out when their downtime is and go when you're most likely to have a chance of success. And as Jake said, if you get there and they are swamped, ask when is a window that you can go in, and then go back at that time.
And a bit of a different conversation, so we don't need to get too far into that. But when setting up a rescue for a store, make sure that you're setting up a time that's convenient for the store. Again, the times that Jen said are likely not good times. Sometimes it's the receiver, and the receiver there is there from 6 a.m. to noon. So just be mindful of things like that when talking to people who are working in the food service industry.
Yep. And then a word on corporate donors. Corporate donors are the biggest challenge. National corporations can have policies at the national level that precludes them from working with unaffiliated organizations. We're actually right now in conversation with a couple of those national grocery chains, trying to get those doors open and hopefully be able to spread the love a little bit. But you're not going to get into a Target, for example, if you're not affiliated. What you can do though is let them know that you're there for them if you need them, because sometimes those power outages come in and they will need your services. And it's not the worst idea to go to all of those, Targets, Aldi's, Walmart's, folks that aren't allowed to donate to you, and just let them know you're around when they need you, because you just never know when something's going to happen where, their regular partners can't get the food that they need to be picked up. Yeah, and that's it. So I guess we will go over to questions. I'm going to stop. Actually, before we get to questions, there's a couple things I know, links we're going to drop in the chat. I want to put a word in for, we're doing some listening sessions for the White House conference on hunger that's happening in September. We're trying to gain the voice of food rescue. We're trying to get food rescue organizations to participate. Right now, a lot of times, when people think about hunger initiatives, they don't think about food rescue. So Jake dropped in a link to register. We'd love to have you join that conversation. We're putting it together in a report for the White House that we will be sending in. And then in October, we are having a conference. It'll be a virtual online conference for everybody except our specific partners. Cannot manage an in-person conference bigger than that this year, but this is sort of our dry run to see how it goes. And we really want to bring together the food rescue community, the food recovery community, to start having these conversations as a group. And so we'd love to have you register and participate for that. Registration will be going live this week, I believe. So keep a lookout for that. You will probably get an email for it if you're on our email list. And if not, it will be on our social media. And with that, I will take questions.
Jen, before questions, do you want to plug the next webinar?
No. I don't remember what it is.
It looks like it is increasing food access in your community.
Oh, that's a good one. Yes, increasing food access. Food recovery gives you the opportunity to really address food access issues and go beyond the existing network. This is a topic I'm super passionate about. Would love to see you all here next month on that. So let's look at our questions.
Got some questions from an anonymous attendee. Do you have any best practices for managing donors when they have given bad product and can't see the problem with it?
Jake, can you handle the second one about the chat being disabled? See if you can fix that.
Yes.
And then I will. Yeah. So the rule of thumb we tell our partners is, the refrigerator test or kitchen counter test. If this was in your refrigerator, would you try to utilize it? Would you cut around the bad spot on that and use it? Or would you throw it away because it's gross and not worth your time? That kind of resonates with people. They understand that. It's a great yardstick. I think everybody kind of knows what they would and wouldn't bother with in terms of food that is maybe past its prime. So that's sort of that's the first thing, is we give them that rule of thumb. We offer them some grace the first time around and hope that they will grow with us. And then after that, we have been known to have a person stand from our organization go with them while they're doing the culling, and show them what's good and what's bad, what we can take and what we can't take. I don't know what kind of donor you're talking about. Potentially you can elevate it up the management chain. I don't like doing that if I don't have to. You don't want to get somebody in trouble for doing the work of donating food. But if somebody's really just giving you garbage, it has to be dealt with. We don't run into it too often. It does happen occasionally, but nobody's sort of steadfastly insists on giving us bad product.
Jen, I think what's going on with the chat is that I am not the host, so I can only send messages to the hosts and other panelists.
Okay.
So you may have to copy and paste, re-copy and paste those links to the folks who are participants.
Okay, I will do that.
So I'll give you a second to that.
I see Dave's comment or question.
Yeah. So Gabrielle Di Domenico asked, how can you get past grocery store managers who seem to open to the idea of partnership, put everything on corporate? I need, parentheses, I need to contact corporate first and refuse to share corporate contacts even after repeated attempts to check in or circle back. Can you please explain what you are doing, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So if a store level employee is not helpful and not giving us the contacts that we need, I've been known to go to the website and start looking at corporate to find corporate contacts and make my way in through there. Hold on, Jake, I have to make you host. I can't.
Sure, you can. Yeah, go ahead and do that. Now I'll copy and paste them back in.
Okay. Make co-host. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. It's difficult. It is difficult, and for corporate that have an exclusivity agreement, which many of them do, you're not going to get past that, even at the corporate level. But for an organization that is, say, a local grocery store chain or has discretion with who they donate to, there's, I will search around the internet until I find them. I've gone through LinkedIn to look for people that have like manager of that corporation listed. You basically have to be an internet sleuth and go that way. The other thing I strongly suggest doing is if you can find somebody that has any contacts with them. So if you go to LinkedIn and you find the appropriate contact or list of contacts, also go to Facebook and look and see if you have any contacts in common and try to find a warm introduction. That's super helpful. You can't always do that, but it can be really helpful. And then approach them on LinkedIn if you have to. If you can't find any other contact, approach them on LinkedIn. And remember, you're not asking them to give you something, you're proposing a partnership. So the way you're going to go about talking to them is, hey, we love the work that you're doing in this field, or, you're such a staple in the community. We really would like to work with you to help neighbors in need. It's that cooperative framework that's really important.
Haley, I saw that you asked, do you find that in-person email or phone contact is the best? I'm not sure what that is referring to. Can you either clarify or let us know if we've answered your question?
I'm going to say in person for approaching donors. I almost exclusively prefer to go in person because you can have that back and forth. So that conversation about, where you're going to have dinner. If I email my spouse right now and say, hey, let's have Chinese for dinner, then I'm going to wait until she sees the email, and then maybe she's going to wait to answer it. Maybe she's not even going to answer it. Maybe she doesn't want Chinese and isn't going to bother, right? But if I'm right in her face, I can say, I'm hungry. Where are we getting dinner? So really just being in that store, being at that location and having that conversation is irreplaceable. Did we answer all 6?
Yes, there's a little bit of break in the question. So I'm going to drop Jen's email and link to Jen's Calendly in the chat, just so everybody has that. Well, it looks like we've got another question from Michael. Any suggestions when you are trying to recruit new food donors when working in a community that has already been covered heavily by your own organizations and others?
Yep, think outside the box. Have you approached all the universities, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, hospitals, all of the various institutions, caterers, events? There's just a ton of food out there, and even a heavily covered community has gaps. We are heavily, we cover Pittsburgh really heavily. We've got about 100, 150 rescues a day. There are donors we're not even touching. Like we have donors that are on our wish list that we haven't gotten to yet. So there's room. Also, the other thing is to think about expanding donors that you already have. So a great example, Giant Eagle, our local grocery store, we started working with them years ago. From the stores, we rescue produce and baked goods. From their convenience store, we rescue everything like sandwiches and prepared grab and go foods and whatnot. So we're now looking at including all of those categories of food into our grocery store pickups, which is going to substantially increase our the food that we get from them. And then eventually we're probably going to look at dairy from our convenience stores, which I don't think we're getting their milk and cheese and things from the get-goes right now. But it's like there's always not always, but there's often another step up that you can do or that you can take.
Doesn't look like we have any additional questions at the moment. Suppose if anything does come up, you can always email Jen.
Yeah, you have my Calendly link. The last thing I want to say is that you know, your food donors are partners, and you're their partners, right? They're your partners, you're their partners. And you want to have a good relationship with them from the beginning, you know, for the long haul. And that helps you address things like when somebody on staff is giving you bad product. That's not to say there aren't bad donors or donors that are really difficult. And we've had some that have been very difficult, and sometimes there's no answer. But you know, if you establish that back and forth and that cooperative tone to your relationship from the start, it really lays a foundation for a good relationship long term, where you can approach problems cooperatively and where you kind of have each other's backs. And so I just urge you to, as you are working with your donors and going out and seeking new donors, kind of come at it from that framework. That being said, my Calendly link is in the chat. Feel free to reach out if you have further questions. I hope to see you at our White House listening session tomorrow and at our conference in October. So thanks, everybody. Good to see you.